Dr. Sima Samar has been fighting for equality and justice for most of her life. Born into a polygamous family in Afghanistan, she learned early that girls had inferior status, and she even had to agree to an arranged marriage if she wanted to go to university to study medicine. Armed with that medical degree, Dr. Samar provided healthcare in rural areas of Afghanistan to people who had never had medical help before, and also went on to assume senior leadership roles within the Afghan government. She has now published a memoir, appropriately called Outspoken, My Fight for Freedom and Human Rights in Afghanistan, written with award-winning Canadian journalist, author, and noted human rights activist Sally Armstrong. And ladies, I am so pleased to have the chance to speak with you for an honest chat today. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, and congratulations. Congratulations on the publication of this memoir. It's tough, I think, to write a memoir because you have to condense a very impactful life into the pages of a book. What was the experience like for you, Dr. Samar?
First of all, thank you very much for having me. I think it was not an easy because, as you said, I had to pack the issues, and also it reminded me of the time that I gone through a lot of difficulties in my life. So it was also, there was some time that after finishing the talk with Sally, I was crying afterward for some minutes in order to get kind of a relax from the pain, from the pressure.
Yeah. You know, you really have lived under the threat of violence almost your entire life because you are an outspoken woman. Why was it important to you that this memoir be published?
I think it was important because the young generation of Afghanistan, the young girls, see me as a minister or as a chairperson of the Human Rights Commission and so powerful, but they don't know what was the whole road that I gone through and how difficult what it was. And I tried to show that it is not impossible if you want to do, if you have commitment to do some of the work that I did.
Sally, you've covered stories in and about conflict zones throughout your career. I was curious as to what made this story different. Why did you want to work with Dr. Samar on this memoir?
Well, actually, Catherine, for a lot of reasons. First of all, I do like exposing truth. I do like shining a hot light on injustice. And when Sima asked me to collaborate with her, I have been interviewing Sima Samar since 1997. I interviewed her, followed her around, stayed even with her family when the Taliban were first in charge. And I'd like to come back actually to the comment about why it upset her. You know, Sima Samar created what happened during the 20 years. It was Sima Samar who brought in the law against violence against women. She introduced human rights to the country. She was the first ever Minister of Women's Affairs. And in one day, all of that disappeared. In fact, her Ministry of Women's Affairs became the Ministry of Vice and Virtue, which is a hateful place that punishes women and tries to erase women from society. So the fact that it upset her, I totally understand. But the fact that we did it together, that I helped her to bring her story to the world, I think it's a very important story because it's a cautionary tale. This could happen elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to talk a little bit about that, the idea that this could happen elsewhere, because there is a sense right now that women's rights are being rolled back or targeted, even in parts of the world where they have more or less been enshrined for years. And I'd love to hear from both of you your thoughts about that. And are you worried? Are you worried about women's rights in general globally? Dr. Samar, why don't we start with you? And then Sally, I'd love your thoughts too.
Yes, I think I am worried because it's some of the people are trying to normalize the situation, and we see the conservative group of politicians coming in power in different countries in Europe, and also and we see in the South America, and also hopefully not in North America, but there's no guarantee. And it is actually, I see the empowerment of patriarchy once again in our region very much because of the Taliban took over. And they encouraged the other groups, the other terrorist group, similar group as Taliban, to and tell them that if we could do it, you can do it also.
And
that
Sally,
is a
yeah.
Yeah.
What's happening, Catherine, is it started, well, it didn't start with the Taliban, but let's us start with them. They hijacked their religion and their culture for political opportunism, and they got away with it. We didn't challenge back because, you know, we're so worried that if we say, how dare you claim that God says girls can't go to school, they'll be pushed back for us in terms of not understanding a religion, not understanding a culture, and that was nonsense. The world let them get away with it. And we are seeing a repeat of that. Look what's happening in Iran. I mean, the people do not want this horrible treatment. Look what's happening in South Sudan. And indeed, although Sima is hopeful it will not happen in North America, we have lots of evidence that this kind of thing is coming to North America. Now, I'm not discouraged about the women's movement stopping. The women's movement is stronger than ever, and they're marching forward, and education is changing that in places that were not able to change it before. But we have leadership today that leans to populism, and populism is never good for women.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, and Dr. Simar, a lot of the work that you have done has been to advocate for healthcare for women and also access to education for women. Can you give us a sense of why you chose healthcare and education? How, from your perspective, can those change a woman's life?
Yes, I think, first of all, health and education has very close connection. The educated women do know about their bodies, and they can make a decision about their family and plan their family, the number of the children, and so on. And I also see that education is a strongest tool against any ignorance, against any kind of a patriarchal system or regime. So when you cannot really misuse the educated people and impose the misuse of religion and culture on them. But it's easy to impose that kind of a excuse and reduce their freedom and accessibility to their basic human rights and exercise of their basic human rights. That's why I think it's really important to focus on education, quality education, because the madrasa style is also education, but that is brainwashing of the people. And then health is also really important for empowerment of women. I mean, if women do not have access to reproductive rights, they cannot be active on politics, they cannot be active on social life, they cannot be a good leader, they cannot be a good police officer, for example. If they have 10 children, they don't have time to be an officer or a good politician or a good medical doctor. So I think it's really have connection. And I think one of the reason in Afghanistan or in other poor countries, the increase of the family member, the increase of the children, increase poverty, reduce the access to social services for the people, and then it is causing violence, and it is improving or pushing people towards conflict because there's a discrimination in the family. So I think it's key. It's key for women to be educated and have access to reproductive rights, including contraception.
When we started off the interview, we talked about that this was a difficult memoir to write, that it often left you feeling very intense emotions. Do you feel in any way hopeful about the future of women's access to equality or just a fair chance at life in Afghanistan at this particular point in history?
Yes, I cannot lose hope, because if I lose hope, then nothing is left to fight for. For a few reasons. One, I think the young generation of Afghanistan, with the improvement and development of technology, they have access to information. Second, I think, is again, they are really they show their thirst to get education, and that is something that we should do and promote. So I also ask the international community really to focus on good quality of education everywhere, because we cannot bring democracy, we cannot bring sustainable peace with bombs. We have to be very, very clear. And that is one of the reasons that I think the people should read Outspoken. It is a good example that we cannot bring peace in democracy and implement the principle of human rights in a country with bombs, with missiles, with the military action. It should come through promotion of human rights and people-centered.
Sally, you have, we talked about the fact that this has been your career. You have gone into conflict zones. You have covered stories, especially related to women and to their rights as well, to human rights. You described feeling somewhat hopeful. How do you maintain that sense of hope when you're seeing again and again throughout your career the erosion of rights for women?
Well, I don't see the erosion of rights. I see women fighting back, and I see some misguided politicians pushing women around. But consider this, Catherine. During the 20 years that the international community was in Afghanistan and Sima Samar was nation building with her colleagues, life expectancy in that country went from 47 years to 63 years. People have called the 20 years a failure. That's not a failure, it's a miracle. And it's the best improvement I've seen in any country I've covered in how many decades of journalism I've been doing. So yes, I am hopeful, because something always happens, something always turns, and then you have another chance at reaching the finish line. So yes, I am hopeful.
And what, Sally, what can other women do? We are in a privileged position for the most part here in Canada. What can women here do to support women in Afghanistan?
Yeah, do you want me to answer, or?
Sure, both
Yeah.
either of you. Yeah, thank you.
Well, I think one, you should keep the situation of women's rights in Afghanistan on the agenda, because it should not be forgotten. Two, I think you should also be the voice of the voiceless who are inside Afghanistan, and we can give you the information and you can give it to awareness. Three, I think that you can ask people of Canada and also the government of Canada to focus on basic social services provision for people, including access to education. It is still, I mean, it's officially banned, but it is still possible different ways to support education for women and girls in Afghanistan, and also access to health services, and particularly access to reproductive rights. And that is really, really key.
I can add to that. Canadian Women for Women in Afghanistan is very active, particularly, well, not particularly, all along they've been active in educating the girls. And anyone who listens to your wonderful podcast can access them on the internet. And they are now providing online schooling to keep some of the girls, at least, in school during this period.
And so just a final question then to both of you. From this book, if there's one element of this memoir that you would like people to keep in mind when they're going to the bookstore, when they're ordering online, when they want to learn more, what do you want them to know about this memoir? Sally, we'll start with you, and Dr. Simar will end with you.
Well, I'm really glad you asked that, because, following Sima Samar around for these 25 years, I believe, She's a heck of a story to follow. She's a journalist's dream because she can make you laugh and she can make you cry. She has stories that I love retelling. And what do I like about this book? This book tells what it's really like to be a woman in Afghanistan, to watch human rights develop, to watch nation building begin, and then, heaven forbid, to see it crash to the ground. It's such an honest telling.
Dr. Samar,
Yep.
your
Yes,
thoughts
I think
too.
it is important because if you look at the books written about Afghanistan, it's always written by men, and it's always written by from the male mentality or angle of looking to the issue. And I think this is my personal life, what I have gone through, and what I see as a problem in the country. And it's also important that the people can see that it is not only the woman in Afghanistan is not only the one behind that blue burqa. They are women who can understand and who can speak and who can write and who can change within that difficult society. It is not an easy work, but it is not impossible. So I think that's why the people should read the book. And I think they can also have an impact on the foreign policy of their countries.
I know I said that was the last question, but Dr. Samar, I have one more, just because it's such a rare opportunity to speak with someone who, as Sally noted, you spent your entire career building towards a country which allowed women to explore their full potential, and then you watched that crumble in front of your eyes. Can you talk to us about the emotions that you felt in the days and weeks when when you started to see your work being eroded? And can you talk to us about why you are able to maintain a sense of hope moving forward, that things can be rebuilt?
Yeah. It's very, very difficult to put it in words. I really cried as much as maybe more than my entire life because I had really difficult life. So I was crying during different period of history. But I really cried a lot after the fall of the regime because it was unexpected. And it was actually, we fought for 20 years. We brought back the same regime back in power. And my hope is that, first of all, the young generation. Secondly, I think my hope is that I keep saying that do not matter how dark is the night, it will be dawn next day. So no matter how difficult and cold will be the winter, and then how difficult for the trees to get their leaves back, but they will get their leaves back. So that will be for Afghanistan as well.
Thank you both very much for your time today. Congratulations on the publication of Outspoken. I wish you much success, and I thank you both for your contribution to women's human rights.
Thank you.
Thank you